Welcome back for session 4.3. This is the last session in chapter 4. You're going to be learning a lot about transforming and manipulating with images and being able to use some CSS filters. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is 2D transforming. We're going to do 3D, but we're going to start with 2D to begin with. And with 2D transforming, you can take an image and you can transform it. You can change it. You can move it, so to translate it from position to position. You can size it, so you can add scaling, and you can also skew and rotate it. You can twist it, and that would be skewing or rotating it in a certain degrees. So you can see the examples here of the different effects that you can do. In CSS, all we have to do is say transform with a colon and then apply the effect, and you can apply multiple effects at the same time. So let's go into our code and see what that looks like. In this session, we're going to be playing with a different page than the home page. We're actually going to go to Genta's page. Genta is the patriarch, the father, the grandfather, and we're going to be doing some differences with his imagery and just making his image page look a little different. So let's first look at what it looks like right now. So we have no CSS at all, and we have 3 pictures here, one with his grandson and one with his son. So first we're going to add in our CSS. Okay, and you'll notice that we've used styles 2 and visuals 2. I'm going to go ahead and update both of those because those are still using their, or the visuals 2 is still using its TXT file. So update that. Don't forget to add in the author and the date for that one. And then Genta's page, we're also going to update and get rid of its TXT and enter in its header information. Okay, so we're going to be using our visuals 2 here and Genta's page himself to make this page just a little bit more interesting with its files. So once we have our style sheets in place, we should be able to refresh. And of course, as always, it is still on the TXT page. There we go. Okay, so you can see now, at least it's prettier. We've got our formatting a little bit with the pictures a little bit different, but we're going to actually play around with the imagery and making it move around and use some transformations. So first we are going to apply a transform style to figure 2. Now we're going to do all of this changes in Visual 2, but I want to show you in the main Genta page which figure is which. So first we have this one, which is figure 1. You see it has an ID of figure 1. So we're going to be using the hashtag as opposed to the period. Figure 2 is the one with his grandson, and figure 3 here is the one with his son. So let's go over to the Visual 2. And under our transform styles, first we're going to go ahead and update our figure 2. So we're going to leave this main page here for picture first, and we're first going to start with the grandson page. So we are going to say figure, and we're going to use the hashtag figure 2, because that's the one we want to change. And we are going to transform it. We're going to do a 1-line transform, and we are going to use the rotate, because we're going to twist it 40 degrees. So we're going to rotate it negative 40 degrees so that it goes that direction. And we're going to scale it down a little bit because this picture is a little bit big for what we want to do. So we're going to scale it down 0.8 on both the horizontal and the vertical axis. And next we're going to translate it, which means we're going to move it. We're going to move it 20 pixels and negative 100 pixels. So when we do that, you will see we've picked it up, we've moved it up 100 pixels and over 20 pixels. We've scaled it down a little bit. You see it was this size originally. We scaled it down a little bit and we've rotated it. So that's kind of a neat little way that we could do for that picture. The next one we're going to do is our figure 3. So again, we're going to come back over here and we're going to go to figure, hashtag figure 3. And we are going to do a similar thing with this one. where I'm actually gonna just go ahead and copy and paste this because we're gonna use almost the same things. Instead of rotating negative 40 degrees, we're actually gonna rotate it positive 10 degrees. We are gonna scale it at 0.9 instead of 0.8. So we're gonna still scale it, but not as small. We're gonna stay up just one more. And then for its translation, we are actually gonna move it 20, I'm sorry, we're gonna be using it only translating on the y-axis. So we don't want to translate on the x-axis. We just want to translate on the y-axis, and we're going to go 120 pixels. Now, that's going to transform it and put it up here. But we want to do something else with this one, is we want to add a box shadow to it. So the box shadows are really cool. We actually want to add a box shadow to both of them. So box shadows are just going to add in a little bit more depth to the picture. So we're going to use an RGB of 101, 101, 101, which is a gray. You should be used to it by now. We've done it a few times. And we're going to do the 10 pixels in the one direction and 10 pixels in the other direction, and then 25 pixels for our blur. Horizontal and vertical were the directions I was trying to refer to. So we're going to have that box shadow, and we're going to actually use it in both of them, except in the figure 3, we are actually going to box shadow it in a different direction. So both pictures will look like they are shadowed in that direction. So we have, this one's a bottom and a right. This one is a top and a right. So when we talked about this box shadow, this was 10 degrees or 10 pixels to the right. This is at the top, because we're going to go up. This one's at the bottom. So we're going to add that 10 pixel shadow down here, just making it look like the pictures are sitting on top of each other. After finishing our 2D transformations, you're going to see some 3D transformations. It's important to apply a perspective to your parent object just to be able to describe how far the object needs to recede or move away from you. If you've ever looked at train tracks in the distance, you'll see that there is always a vanishing point where the two objects become one. And that's the thing that we're looking at in the perspective. When the two sides will become one object, and how far away is that? That's how we refer to our perspective. If you have lower perspective, so smaller numbers, there is more distortion because the entire change has to occur in a shorter period of time. If you have higher numbers or a larger distortion, or larger numbers in your perspective, those are going to be less distortion because you have a much longer distance to be able to apply your transformation without having to see that. So since you have a longer distance, you're not going to see as much distortion. When you transform with 3D objects, you have to remember which axis is which. So to begin with your x-axis, it's a horizontal axis, but it kind of starts from your left side and goes into your right. Your y-axis is up and down. This is pretty similar to what we're already expecting with x and y, but y is going to start at the top and go straight to the bottom. Remember, negatives are at the top with this. With your z-axis, it's kind of going to start in that top right-hand corner and move through the object out towards you in a positive sense to become the positive side of the z-axis. So being able to look at the three of those to be able to decide which direction do you want to move. Do you want to move positive or negative, X, Y, or Z? When you play around with transforming objects, you're going to want to play with the numbers until you get it looking the way you want. So just try to remember where the different axes are and be able to use those. When you apply translations or rotations or scaling, you can apply them on any axis. So instead of just doing a scale, you would do a scale X or a scale Y. And then you can, of course, set your perspective. Or rotate X or rotate Y, or translate X, translate Y. So being able to make all of those differences. You can also do rotate and translate as a single line with all three values if you wanted to do that. So when you're ready, let's go over to the code. We are going to now add a 3D transformation on our images. And we're actually going to add a 3D transformation on all 3 images. So first, we're going to alter the perspective of the page. So we're going to say how the entire page of the article is going to have a perspective applied. Perspective, and it is going to be a 600 pixel perspective. So when I run that, nothing changes. That's because the perspective is going to work with the transformation that we're going to be playing with. Okay, so that is just on our article. So sets the perspective of the article space to 600 pixels. Now we're going to work on our figure 1, which we haven't even touched yet. Figure 1. And on this one, we are going to transform and we're going to rotate to the X degree 30 degrees. We are then going to translate to the Z degrees, sorry, it's the Z direction, 50 pixels. That's going to be our transformation for our, and you can see that perspective, how we talked about that perspective being at 600 pixels. That's how it knew how far to go. So we ended up translating in the Z direction to have it go back, and we rotated it just a scotch in the X direction. Next, we're going to go ahead and add another box shadow because we like those. And actually, this is pretty similar to the other one, so I'm going to just go ahead and copy, paste. And in this case, we are going to do 0 pixels in the top and bottom. No, the left and right. This one's starting right. So 0 pixels, and then 10 pixels, and then 25 pixels. So let's see what that does. And you can see we've added this box shadow to the outside of, but we left the top empty. And we have a blur of 25. We are going to add in some rotation to both of these other pictures. We didn't add them before, but we're going to go ahead and add them now because now we have a perspective that we're playing against. So in our transform before the semicolon, so we did a rotate, we did a translate, now we are going to do a rotate Z. And we're going to push it back so it looks like it's sitting back. We're going to go 30 degrees, rotating Z, and we're going to rotate the Y at 60 degrees for that first fixture of him and his grandson. And you see how it still looks like it's a 3-dimensional, but we rotated against the Z and the Y axis as opposed to the X and the Z axis, which is where we rotated this one. For figure 3, we're going to do a similar thing, except instead of the Y and the Z, we are going to do, actually we're going to do the Y and the Z as well. We're just going to do them a little bit different. We're going to rotate and then translate. So we're going to rotate in the Y direction, -70 degrees. So it's going to come back at us. And we're going to translate in the Z direction, -20 degrees. I'm sorry, -20 pixels. Translate. We don't translate in degrees, we translate in pixels. And you can see now that's going kind of the other direction where it looks like both of the cards are sitting on top of, kind of on top of a board, on top of Grandpa up here. So this was playing around with transformations. The more you use transformations, the more comfortable you will get with Y, Z, X, rotate versus translate, how those affect and how they work with that perspective. I recommend go ahead and play when you get especially to your case 4. Play around with some rotations and some translations and see if you can get it looking the way that you want it to. Next, we're going to be talking about our CSS filters. So these are a lot like photography filters, where we can change the brightness or the contrast or the opacity or the saturation. Very similar to probably if you've done any photography at all or any manipulation with images, you'll see a lot of that. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and be playing with a couple of these, the grayscale and the saturation, the contrast, and the sepia to see how those images affect and how we could change those. Again, this is one of those where you're going to play around until you decide which one you like best. All right. We are going to apply a CSS filter of sepia to some of the pictures. So we're going to stay in this picture, and we're going to set sepia on the first picture. So let's go back into our figure 1. Actually, we're going to go ahead and make a new one because we're going to add these under filter styles as opposed to transformation styles, so that when we work with them, we know which one we're working with. Figure #figure1. So for figure 1, for Grandpa, we're going to go ahead and apply the sepia. Unfortunately for this one, we do have to do a WebKit to make sure that the filter is applied. And we're going to do sepia at 0.8. Then we're going to just do filter at sepia 0.8. At some point, you will not have to do the WebKit filters anymore, but at this point, you still have to do it. So figure, and then we're going to do figure 2. So with the little boy, and we are going to add in a grayscale. So similar, so I can just do a little bit of copy and paste. And instead of doing filter, I'm going to do, or instead of sepia, I'm going to do grayscale. And our grayscale on this one, we are going to set to 1. And you can see that grayscaled him just a straight black and white, kept all of the captions just fine, but did go ahead and do that. So then we're going to go ahead and do our figure 3. And for figure 3, we are going to saturate it. So we're going to add a saturation. Now, again, I would not do this in real life because I think that this would be too much to do on one page. But again, we are doing all of this to show you examples. Contrast. So we're going to do both saturate and contrast for both of these. And again, we needed that web filter or the WebKit because we need WebKit. And you can see it kind of made it a little bit brighter. I also need to cut off some of it. That was weird. Oh, probably because of the sizing. Yeah. So if the page is a little bit bigger, you'll see more of it, but it looked like it was cutting it off because of the sizing of the page. So again, that's how the perspective is going to work when we do that. So make sure when you test your code that you always have to test your code, that you do increase and decrease the sizes of your pages as you go along. The final section of chapter 4 is going to be image maps. Image maps are cool. What they do is they apply a map to the image by giving a coordinate system of either a rectangle or a circle, or an ellipse if necessary, to be able to say this section of the picture is going to link to a specific page. This is similar to if you've ever done Facebook tagging where you take a face and you say so-and-so lives, or so-and-so is this picture. In this case, you're tagging a section of the picture and allowing that section to now be a hyperlink. So when you click on it, it goes to that person's page. So we're going to go through and do an entire map of that front homepage with all those pictures and be able to add all of the different family members. All right, we are now going to go back to our main homepage, and we're going to be setting up what's called an image map. So we are going to put squares around each of the faces so that we can click on them directly and go to their individual pages, which will be kind of fun. So first we have to change some HTML code. When we have our figure of our family, which is up here on line 45, we have our image and we have our fig caption. And then underneath that, we're going to insert a map. So our map is going to tell us where things are. We're going to name it the family map. And inside of our map, we are going to set areas. So an area has a shape. I'm going to use a rectangle, and it has coordinates. Depending on what kind of shape you picked, the coordinates will be different. In this case, it's going to be 74 to 74 to 123 to 141. So it's going to be a square around Eco's face. We are then going to reference his page. So tvico.html. And we are going to give him an alt text that says, this is Eco Como Ma Su. Okay, so we are going to do that same thing for each of the pictures or each of the people on the page. Okay, so now we have created our family map with all of our coordinates of rectangles surrounding each of the family names, and then of course having an href that is going to link to that location. Once we have created our image map, we can then apply the image map to the individual pages. So on the image itself, right above the fig caption in the image, we are going to say use map, and we are going to say hashtag family map, because that was the name of the map that we used. So the cool thing with this, after all of that work, we're going to close this back to our normal width here and refresh our page. Now, if I take my mouse and I hover over, you'll see that my mouse goes over and then it turns into a hyperlink. So it takes me to his page. Each of them does. So I can go over each of the different pages and click, and it'll take me to her page. And I can return. I can click on Grandpa, get Grandpa's. I can click on Little Boy, get his page, click on Grandma, go to her page, and then go to Dad and get his page. So being able to use that image map was a really great way of being able to turn this image, just a picture, into a set of hyperlinks that are really useful for your users. In your review assignment, you're going to be adding a whole nother family to the Tree and Book website. Try to remember to follow the directions carefully in order. They have to be in order, and compare them to the sample image as you go along and make sure you know that you're doing it right. Again, if your website's already set up, please just submit a link to which page it is and add it to your website. If you have not finished your website yet, you don't have to do it until next week, but this is the last chance that you'll have, so you can still go ahead and zip it and submit to D2L. Our case 1 is going to be a site for a college astronomy site, or a college astronomy class. Again, you're going to be following the directions and comparing them to the samples to make sure that your to make sure that everything looks the same with your pictures, and follow the directions to make sure that you do any of the directions as they are set. Again, if your website's set up, submit it there. If not, go ahead and zip it and put it into D2L. Case 4 is going to be a realty website. There is a lot of imagery and copy text that is included in this one. Make sure that you use the information that was given, but please make it personal, however you want to design the page. This is going to give you a chance to be able to really use the skills that you've learned up to this point to make your page and to make sure that you pay close attention to the requirements of what you have to do. Just because you may not like a certain style or don't want to use it doesn't mean you don't have to. You do have to follow all of the directions as they're given. Again, if you're finished with your website, push it up there. If not, go ahead and zip it. Remember, this is the last week that you'll be able to submit a zipped file. Next week, you'll have to start putting it onto your website. So let's get that finished. Last thoughts for chapter 4. Make sure you finish the quiz. If you do not have your website up, or if you do have your website up, please send me the link to your site's main page, because I want to know where it is and I want to be able to have it so that I can access it. You should also make sure that there is a link to all of your assignments from the homepage for now. Now, once you finish with this class, you can keep this site and do whatever you want with it. But for right now, I want a link to all of the assignments that you have done. If you don't have your website up, try to make sure you get it up before, as soon as you can. Week 3, we're going to start in on chapter 5 and 6, and those will have to be up on your website. Again, it's your website. With the main page of the website, you can make it look any way you want, as long as I can find the links to the assignments when I get there. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.